Economic failure is clearly evident as the debt hits $18 trillion. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. First, we're going to get into a bit of humor. This out of the Hill, Obama recovery is real. But of course, the Hill isn't posting this as comedy. This is supposedly real. Just like Obama said, the recovery is, quote, real, steady, and happening. It's quite hilarious that he's out there reading off the teleprompter and actually fooling some of the public. So let's just get into a couple things. We'll talk about the recovery right here. This so-called recovery, in fact, statistically is wrong on all counts. If you measure the recovery by any real statistic, you will see that it's nothing but a fraud. And one of those individuals who was really caught in this whole hope and change strategy that Obama used to swindle the public into voting for him. This person right here, Peggy Joseph, at the Obama rally in 2008. And, you probably have seen this video. She says, I don't have to pay my bills. My car is going to fill up with gas. I don't have to pay my mortgage, all because the Emperor Obama is in there. He will be voted in, and I'm so happy. Everything's going to be taken care of for me. And now you read the new information of her, and she realizes that she was swindled by Obama, just as many others are. But unfortunately, the general public isn't waking up to this fact quite yet. So let's get into the real stats. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. We'll break this down and we'll get into the truth. This is right from treasurydirect.gov, the debt to the penny and who holds it. This is the total public debt outstanding. We're reaching, actually broke the barrier of $18 trillion. And that is obviously the highest it has ever been, and it continues to get high. So look at what Obama had said previously, that raising the debt ceiling doesn't increase the debt. And of course, technically he's right. All it does is raise the ceiling, but it doesn't necessarily make them spend any more. But of course, you allow them to spend more, and surely they will. And this has been continuing every single time they raise the debt ceiling. They'll raise it again, and they will raise it again and again, and we'll go back and forth, and they'll pretend that it's some sort of debate versus the Republicans and the Democrats, but all this is more money piling into a system that is guaranteed to collapse. We know this specifically because the debt never declines on average. It never goes down for an extended period of time. That is when it will collapse. If we ever see the debt being drastically reduced in some sort of deflation, we know we're in for big trouble. And of course, it might be healthy for the economy to go this route, but we know specifically that they're up to no good when this happens. One of the statistics on this page I want you to note is the intragovernmental holdings of $5 trillion. We'll get into that in a moment. Let's look at this. This is out of CNS News. Of this $5 trillion, what was the Treasury calling intragovernmental debt, which is the money that the Treasury has borrowed and spent out of trust funds theoretically set aside for other purposes, such as the Social Security Trust Fund. That's right, the Social Security Trust Fund being used. They're able to dip their hands into this, and it doesn't matter because it's all phony anyway. There's no money in any of these funds. It's pretty ridiculous when you think about it. Do you actually think that your retirement account will be there when you need to use it? Look how much debt they're already in. They had to dip their hands in there and pull out $5 trillion of that. If they had to pay that back right away, we were talking of now so many $1 trillion even on top of where they are. It's pretty ridiculous to think about where we are headed. But of course, they'll keep all of that off the books, off the balance sheet. And this is what I wrote about in my book. It works like just any other Ponzi scheme whereby new people paying into this pool of money are funding the people receiving those benefits now. That's exactly what's occurring today, is that it's all basically a fraud. And then I said this, as long as the new money flows in, the system can theoretically continue. However, many countries have aging populations, which will increase the burden upon the individuals paying the system. Now, as it stands, there's actually no money in these funds, and it's pretty crazy to think about that the system is basically riding on nothing but air, nothing but fumes, and the public is going to have some big trouble because a lot of people are going to be relying on these retirement type accounts. And when it comes time for this system to crash, we're going to be in very big trouble. Look at this right here out of the Washington Times. There are 2 points I want to make in this from this article here. Millions are underemployed, and the current number, or approximately current number, is 15% underemployed. People who can't find the work that they need to, perhaps they're not necessarily unemployed, but they're only getting part-time work when they require full-time to afford what they need to. I've also discussed in the past how they've had issues with, they're not exactly under the poverty line, but they can't actually make ends meet. These people here are also not part of these statistics that are clearly very, very fraudulent. And then right here talking about how something I mention very often, millions forced to work just as part-time so employers can avoid the burdensome Obamacare, and they're moving, many people are moving back in with their parents, and so on and so forth. So essentially, things that I talk about often are being brought up right here in the Washington Times. And then I want to get into this, how they skew these numbers. Obama, very, very good at reading off his teleprompter right here. He said this: after the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, our businesses have now created 10 million new jobs over the last 54 months. This is the longest uninterrupted stretch of job growth in our history. Wow. He has done such a great job. He is the emperor, and he should be granted at least another 4 more years. In fact, forget about elections. Let's just give him the reign forever. So let's get it back to reality here. They said this: why does he mention just the last 54 months? We know specifically that he's been in office longer than 54 months. And the reason is because when you include his entire span that he's been president, or excuse me, emperor, he has a much worse track record. So surely they're going to use these statistics, skew them, because the general public doesn't know the difference. They still believe that Obama is going to pay off their mortgage. So let's get on with this. We're talking about out of CNBC, a few points that I wanted to make. Basically, what they suggest in this article is in 2015, they are not going to be able to raise the interest rates. They're saying that the economy still isn't doing well. They said this: inflation remains tepid, which is quite funny to me. And then they also said this: while global growth is relatively anemic. So one thing I wanted to note here is that they're talking about the inflation rates that are down. Of course, when you're going to leave out the most important factors being your, for example, electricity prices and food prices, sure, you're going to see inflation rates that aren't exactly on the upswing. And, if you continue to skew the numbers, for example, you use your CPI index or any other index, core inflation, where they are able to take certain things, like just for example, if people find steak too expensive, they suggest that you're going to start eating ground beef, and then ground beef is too expensive, and then you'll eat something else instead. Well, that's not how it works. That's not a cost of living increase. That's just plain out fraud. So essentially, they're not looking at the real stats. I don't know about you, but my prices for everything continues to rise. Electricity prices rising every single year over year, significantly in fact. And then you look at the food prices also continuously rising. So right here, they also get into the fact that they are going to have to continue with ultra easy monetary policy. And that specifically means that they're going to keep the interest rates down at 0. If they do this, we can expect the same old to continue. We know it's just going to be more and more debt piling up. We know that nothing will change. The military-industrial complex is going to continue to build their bombs, to continue to, really take advantage of all these countries that they're invading in. We see the saber rattling occurring all around the world, and nothing ever changes. Things only get worse. what we're headed for after Obama, if he actually doesn't become emperor, is in fact just more of the same. In fact, it'll probably just get worse. That's what we're headed for, and it's quite unfortunate. So the reason I did this video, the moral of the story here today, is that debt is expanding far beyond anything that can ever be paid back. Do not be swindled by those in the teleprompter readers. They will not have the right answer for you. We need to look into the real statistics and unveil the truth. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to become an insider. The Insiders is where I give out all my best intel for free, and that is available at themoneygps.com. You scroll down to the bottom, fill in your email address, and you get occasional emails from me with good, short, concise info.